Hello, friends, comrades, and interested others. This is the second video in what will be a short series offering some simple instruction and guidance on how to organize activist projects in your community. In my last video, we explored the topic of why we need to organize and the importance of creating community autonomy and horizontal power structures. These videos are intended for people who are interested in getting involved in social justice movements or who are looking to start a community project or volunteer organization. In this video, we'll explore what some different organizing models are and what they're used for. The information I'll be providing in these videos is based on a couple of different organizing trainings that I participated in, as well as my own personal experience as a community organizer. The content of these videos is based on subjective experiences, the information I have available to me, and some online research, and it's by no means intended to be a substitution for real-life organizing training. So I'm assuming if you're watching this video that we're on some level in agreement that the world kind of sucks and we want to make it better. The government sucks, corporations suck, capitalism is spiraling towards collapse at the same time we're in the early to mid stages of a global environmental catastrophe. We've learned that because the powers that be are not interested in improving our quality of life or our environment, it is now more than ever up to us as the people to start creating solutions for ourselves, for our communities, and for our world. You may have any number of things you want to achieve, from cleaning up a local park to discouraging street-level fascist organizing to stopping an industrial development project or even overthrowing a government. Anything from very local to very broad issues can be tackled with community organizing, if you know how to organize, what organizing model to employ in addressing the issue, and how to break your campaign down into achievable goals. As Malcolm X famously said, "We're not outnumbered, we're out-organized." So let's explore some different organizational structures and what their common applications are. There's an extremely broad array of structures into which people will organize themselves, including things like corporations, gangs, tribes, religious groups, nations, and sports teams, to name a few. And each of these groups can have very complex and variant internal dynamics. For the purpose of this video, I will be focusing on organizing structures that are most commonly used to achieve social justice-related goals. Specifically, we will be focusing on affinity groups, networks, committees, unions, and political parties. To start off, one of the most informal activist organizing structures is the affinity group. Affinity groups are generally small groups of people who work together towards a common goal. Members of an affinity group are generally people who are friends with each other or have some sort of personal relationship. Affinity groups generally lack a formal internal structure, but they will often still have meetings and make decisions on a consensus basis. This is a common model used by anarchists to tackle small issues such as organizing demonstrations or direct actions. A goal that is localized and easily achieved by a small crew of people is good work for an affinity group. You may not want to overcomplicate things by involving a larger organization when a small team could do the job. One may be part of an affinity group of trusted friends with whom one organizes localized actions, while also being part of a larger, more structured organization. Some of the benefits of affinity group organizing is that there's generally a high degree of trust and camaraderie between the members, which can allow people to cooperate more efficiently and organize actions quickly without getting bogged down in bureaucratic processes. However, a drawback is that because of the lack of internal structure, if de facto hierarchies arise, it may be hard to hold members accountable or remove problematic members if they have more influence or seniority. Next up, we have a network. Now, a network is a system of organizing different individuals and groups who are aligned towards a common cause or share a common goal. People will come together to strategize and share resources within this network, but most often the network itself does not actually organize together as a group. This is similar to a social network. People may meet through the network to start different projects or organizations, but it is not usually the network itself that does this. The role of a network is to facilitate the making of connections and sharing of information. Now, a committee is a very important and ubiquitous organizing model. Committees are used for everything from neighborhood organizations to NGOs to unions to governments. A committee is a panel of officers or directors who perform specific roles within an organization. Most often, members of an organization will run for positions on the committee, and an election will be held in order to determine who will fill these roles. Committee members will fill this position for a set term, often 1 or 2 years, at which point they may withdraw from the position or run for re-election. Oftentimes, organizations will have bylaws stating that committee members can be withdrawn at any time if they violate the bylaws of the organization or if they fail to meet the responsibilities of the role they were elected to. Common roles within a committee include the secretary, treasurer, and different officer or director positions depending on the needs of the organization. Committees will hold regular meetings at which officers will present reports of updates relating to their area of responsibility. Within a committee organization, decisions will be made either by a vote of the committee members or by a general membership vote, depending on the importance of the decision being made. The benefits of a committee is that for a larger organization, it allows for the clear delegation of tasks and simplifies the administrative processes of the organization. Because of the nature of officer positions, internal caucuses, subcommittees, and working groups, a committee can theoretically take on many different types of tasks and be as simple or as complex as it needs to be. Because there is generally a fair amount of internal structure, there's often accountability processes that one can go through if an officer is behaving inappropriately or failing to meet the responsibilities of the role they were elected to. Some of the drawbacks of committee organizing is that these types of organizations do have the ability to become highly political, with power struggles or clashing personalities between committee members. Members may choose to tie up meetings or play political games in order to undermine each other's goals within the organization. Because decisions are often made by a simple majority, 51%, rather than a supermajority or consensus, this democratic process may fall short when the majority of votes do not actually represent what is best for the organization or all of its members. Committee members may also stack meetings, arranging to have less active members attend in order to skew the vote a certain way. Also, depending on the amount of bureaucratic structure within the organization and the size of the organization, decision-making processes can be quite slow. And even if processes for accountability exist within the group's bylaws, it can sometimes be difficult or time-consuming to actually exercise those processes. However, obviously no organizational structure is perfect, and it's still really important to understand how committees work because they are a very common organizing structure, and if you're involved in any sort of activism, you will probably wind up on a committee at some point or another. So, now that you know what a committee is, let's talk about unions. A union is an organization of workers within a specific workplace, across multiple workplaces within the same company, or across multiple companies within the same industry. Often, smaller workplaces will be organized under a larger industry union. For example, when I was working at a store that sold alcohol, we were organized under the Brewers Union. Even though we weren't brewers, our jobs were related to the production and distribution of alcohol, so that's the union that we were organized under. If you follow the model of the industrial workers of the world, you can even have workers in multiple different industries organized under one big union. Unions consist of the rank and file, which is the general membership, and union committee members. Unions take dues from their members in order to fund their activities, which is often a small amount of money subtracted from a worker's paycheck. The benefits of unions are, well, there are a ton of benefits. Unions allow workers to control the conditions under which they work and negotiate with their employers to get better pay, healthcare benefits, and better working conditions. When unionized, workers can take control over the conditions under which they sell their labor, which is really how our world should be, given that labor is the source of power that is responsible for creating and sustaining our society. While conservatives have raged against unions for centuries because unions make them less able to exploit the labor value of their workers, even economists have recently come to the conclusion that unions were a pretty good deal, and that union busting by conservative governments is actually responsible for a lot of the out-of-control wealth disparity that we're currently experiencing. Unions are responsible for pretty much everything good about our working conditions, including things like breaks, livable wages, maximum shift lengths, vacation and sick days, maternity leave, child labor laws, fire exits. Those are all things that you can thank unions for. Unfortunately, many workers no longer benefit from the improved working conditions that unions fought for. Workers now are often working multiple part-time jobs at far below a living wage, with no benefits and little time off. This is a result of the fact that unions have lost a lot of power due to government union busting initiatives. Being in a union gives you the power to strike, so you can refuse to sell your labor if your employer refuses to meet your requested conditions. Because larger unions will often collect more money in dues than they use, unions are also able to offer solidarity and support to other unions and to other social justice initiatives within their community. For example, in Toronto, when the Moss Park overdose prevention site was still unsanctioned and operating out of tents, CUPE was able to rent them a trailer to use, which made a huge difference in seeing that project through the winter until they could get approved for an indoor location. Honestly, if you're a worker and you're not part of a union, you should really try to join one. If your workplace is not unionized and you're not sure how to start a union, consider joining the Industrial Workers of the World. The IWW is a multinational syndicalist union that any worker can join. As long as you're not a cop and you don't have hiring or firing ability within your workplace, there's a place for you within the IWW. That all being said, I will state some of the drawbacks of union organizing. Because unions are organized using a committee model, they also have a lot of the same drawbacks of bureaucracy and potential intra-organizational conflict. However, conflict is obviously something that exists within every organizational structure. Also, the only unions that seem to be tolerated by capitalist governments are unions of government employees and police. So unions are prone to infiltration and union busting attempts, both by employers, corporations, and governments themselves. Coca-Cola famously hired death squads in order to assassinate union organizers in Colombia, and private security companies have often been hired in order to break up strikes and assault union organizers. So union organizing can be dangerous work, but that is because it's very powerful stuff. Last up, we have the political party. Political parties are organizations that seek to institute a political agenda by holding power in some level of government, be it state, provincial, or federal. Most political parties are organized in ways that employ or are similar to a committee structure, though the specifics of their internal structure does vary between parties. Most political parties participate in electoral politics, meaning that they run in public elections and compete for office with other political parties. However, not all political parties are electoral parties. For example, the Revolutionary Communist Party in Canada, or PCR-RCP, does not believe in participating in electoral politics and seeks rather to seize power via revolution. Some of the benefits of party organizing is that they have the potential to hold a lot of power and to institute changes over a broad population or area, and they can construct a political agenda that has the potential to address concerns in many different areas of public life. In different areas of the world where socialist political parties have come to power, they have often been able to institute swift and radical political change, such as instituting healthcare programs, public housing and food programs, and redistributing wealth. However, some of the drawbacks of political party organizing is that it can be very difficult to win an election when running on a radical socialist platform in a Western capitalist country. And other places in the world where socialist parties have received enthusiastic public support have often found their governments to then be overthrown by the US when all of a sudden their resources are no longer cheap and accessible to American buyers. The United States government has a history of putting sanctions on trade with socialist countries, which results in the shortage of certain products, and those shortages are then used to construct a humanitarian crisis in which the US goes in and invades in order to restore democracy, by which they mean instituting a puppet government that can enforce Western capitalist values. But obviously most socialist governments are not perfect either, and anytime you have a large population of people being represented by a small group of people, you have the potential for mismanagement of resources, oppressing minorities, overlooking the concerns of certain sections of the population. According to Marx, the goal of a socialist government should be to eventually dissolve itself once the workers have seized full control of the means of production, and true communism is then achieved. However, we live in a complicated world, and there's an argument to be made that some form of state must be maintained so long as there exists the threat of aggression from external capitalist countries. But to be honest, I've not read Lenin, and so that's probably a larger debate than I could reliably delve into right now. So there you have it. That's a brief overview of what some common leftist organizing structures are, what they're used for, and some of their pros and cons. In the next video, we'll discuss how to set goals for an activist campaign and talk a bit about how to actually start doing this organizing thing we've been talking so much about. I hope this video was informative, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you'd like to have a conversation, the comment section is open. I'll include some further reading in the description, and also a link to my PayPal if you feel like buying me a coffee or helping me pay off some of my student loan. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.